Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new, welcome. I'm Lydia and this is Vintage Nectarines. Today I am participating in a super fun favorite children's book collaboration hosted by Nina of Wrestling with Books and Wrestling with Disney. She asked myself and some other YouTubers that like books to share their favorite children's books. So Nicole of Irresistible Magic, Heather of the Disney Housewife, Tiff of A Little Dose of Magic, myself, and Nina will all be uploading videos today. So children's books to me range from picture books all the way up to middle grade. And so I'm surrounded. I'm looking all over my table right now because I am surrounded in books. So, I don't know what my other fellow children's book lovers are uploading today, but I thought I would show you guys like a wide range of things. So I'm going to show you some of my most treasured and loved picture books that I've had from childhood. The book that really kind of set off my love of reading. A series that I think you would enjoy if you are interested in treasure hunting in Egypt and mummies and things like that. A series that I started reading last year that I'm enjoying. My favorite children's book that I've read so far this year, and two series that I'm really excited to read this year. So without further ado, let's see some books. I think the very first thing I'm going to show is the book that really kind of opened up a love for reading for me. And if you've been around my channel for a while, you have heard me talk about this book and probably some of the books I'm showing today. I'm pretty sure I've done reading wrap-ups on a couple of them, but I have very vivid memories of being in school, and I don't remember what grade I was in, but we had walked from our classroom to the library and we got to have story time. And so my entire class sat on the floor in our library, which I remember loving because there were these big like trees that grew up from the ground. They weren't real trees, of course, but I think they were made out of paper. And they covered this whole area of the ceiling, and we all sat under them on the floor in the library for story time. And I remember listening to The Boxcar Children. And I had been read to, as a young child, but this book, I don't know what it was about this book, but it just like put me in this like whole other world. And I loved the idea of living in a train car. We actually lived in Oregon at the time. I was born in Oregon, and we lived on quite a bit of acreage. And my brother and I remember would go out into the woods and we would like build forts and stuff. And every time we would do that, I would think that we were the Boxcar Children hiding in our forts. A couple years ago, I started reading it to my children, and we have finished the first, I think, first 6 books. So we've read The Boxcar Children, Surprise Island, The Yellow House Mystery, Mystery Ranch, and Mike's Mystery. But there are several more in the series. And it is by Gertrude Chandler Warner. So I definitely recommend these. They are very quick and easy to read, so perfect for young readers, but also really fun to read out loud or to just enjoy yourself. And it's about 4 siblings, if you don't know: Henry, Jesse, Violet, and Benny. And they are orphans who find an abandoned train boxcar and set up house in it. So I love The Boxcar. Okay, now I think I'm going to share my most treasured and loved picture books. I have one that's a songbook, 3 that are books of poetry, and then a couple that are short stories and or just picture books. And they are so treasured because several of them actually have inscriptions from my grandmother. My grandmother was an avid reader, and she and I were very close, and she used to buy me books at Christmas all the time. So this one is from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it's called Go In and Out the Window, an illustrated songbook for young people. And my daughter Jillian still uses this. I'm actually out in my classroom filming because we do homeschool, and she sits at the piano and plays the songs in here. But this inscription says, "For Lydia, Christmas 1993. I'm sure you will enjoy both the songs and the beautiful pictures. I love you so very much, Grandma." So that's very sweet to me. But it's a beautiful book, and it has so many different songs. And the pictures are just gorgeous. So Jillian will sit for hours and play all of these songs. America the Beautiful and Baba Black Sheep and Billy Boy. So I love this one. This is probably a book. It's probably one of the oldest books I own. This one is not from my grandmother. I'm not 100% sure where I got this one, but I know I've had it from the time I was a young child. And this is A Child's Garden of Verse by Robert Louis Stevenson. And I do know that they have reprinted this book numerous times, but mine is a very old copy. And I can't find the actual publication date, but it's very old. And I wanted to read you guys my favorite poem from it. So it has this beautiful picture of flowers that reminds me of my grandmother's garden. And the poem is called The Flowers. All the names I know from nurse: gardener's garters, shepherd's purse, bachelor's buttons, lady's smock, and the lady hollyhock. Fairy places, fairy things, fairy woods where the wild bee wings. Tiny trees for tiny dames. These must all be fairy names. So I love this book. I just think something about it is so gorgeous, how the picture is kind of crackling away almost. I just love this. This one is another book of poetry. This one is also from my grandmother, and this is the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And it's called Who Has Seen the Wind? An illustrated collection of poetry for young people. I just love this one as well. And there's an inscription that says, "Lydia, I hope you enjoy this for many years, especially the poem on page 8. It reminds me so much of you. I love you so very much, Grandma, Christmas of 1991. So let's see what the poem on page 8 says. "Where did you come from, baby dear? Where did you come from, baby dear? Out of everywhere into here. Where did you get your eyes so blue? Out of the sky as I came through. What makes the light in them sparkle and spin? Some of the starry spikes left in. Where did you get that little tear? I found it waiting when I got here. What makes your forehead so smooth and high? A soft hand stroked it as I went by. What makes your cheeks like a warm white rose? I saw something better than anyone knows. Whence came that three-cornered smile of bliss? 3 angels gave me at once a kiss. Where did you get that pearly ear? God spoke and it came out to hear. Where did you get those arms and hands? Love made itself into hooks and bands. Feet, whence did you come, darling things? From the same box as the cherub's wings. How did they all just come to be you? God thought about me, so I grew. But how did you come to us, you dear? God thought about you, so I am here." That's by George MacDonald. Aww, it's so sweet to read these things all these years later. And this says, "Mary Stevenson Cassatt, Ellen Mary in a white coat, about 1896. That's the illustration. That's so sweet. I had forgotten that she said that poem reminded her of me. And this one is also from my grandmother, and it is called Old Turtle, text by Douglas Wood, watercolors by Shang Ki Chi. And I love this one as well. And this one says, "To Lydia, Christmas 1993. This is a wonderful story. Read it with Mom. Love, Grandma." All the beautiful pictures. The old turtle. So those are probably some of my most cherished books simply because they are from my grandmother. But these 3 children's books, I also remember having on my bookshelf when I was very little, and I love the illustrations in these stories. So the first one is, of course, Beauty and the Beast and Other Tales of Enchantment. And I have loved Beauty and the Beast since I was little. And I don't know why, but for some reason, the pictures in this book I just think they're absolutely beautiful. So here's Beauty having dinner with the Beast. And when, of course, he turns back into a handsome prince. Other stories in this one are The Frog Prince and The Six Swans. I think that might be it. I love children's books with such beautiful illustrations. So yeah, so this one has Beauty and the Beast, The Frog Prince, and The Six Swans. This book is probably one of my absolute favorite picture books I've ever owned, and it is called Sleepy Time Tales, and it is falling apart, and it makes me so sad. But again, I loved this one because of the illustrations. But in this book, there are several stories: The Magic Swan, The Enchanted Deer, The Little Red Hen, Snow White and Rose Red, which is one of my favorites, The Unseen Giant, Puss in Boots, Teeny Tiny, The Nightingale, and Tired of Being a Little Girl. And Tired of Being a Little Girl has my absolute favorite pictures in the entire book. I love these illustrations. Look at this flower, this rose with a face. I just love them so much. And look, little gnome. The tree has a face. And here's Snow White and Rose Red. Another gnome or elf. I think this is probably where my love of gnomes and all like forest critters comes from, because I remember reading these books just all the time and staring at all the pictures. Look, oh, the old man in the face there. That one is The Unseen Giant. So this one just sits on my shelf and no one gets to touch it because it is falling apart. And the last picture book I have is the Classic Fairy Tales. These are illustrated by Scott Gustafson. And this one has absolutely beautiful illustrations in it, which is why I got this one. Because I really enjoyed reading these to my kids when they were little, and we still like to read them now. But this one has Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Puss in Boots, Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White, Tom Thumb, Hansel and Gretel, The Frog Prince, Rumpelstiltskin, Cinderella, and the Three Little Pigs. I love this one of Little Red Riding Hood. Good day, Little Red Riding Hood. There she is. Here's an illustration from Snow White, and that little cottage is like the cottage of my dreams. I would live in it in the dark, deep woods in a heartbeat. All the 7 dwarves. And this illustration of the Frog Prince is fantastic. So I just love all of those books. There's something so magical about illustrated children's stories, and I think for little kids, they're perfect for, you know, really putting their little brains into these magical places and getting to like see the pictures jump off of the page. But for me, they're treasures just because I remember them from childhood and they're from special people in my life. Okay, now let's kind of jump into middle grade. So I have been reading the Theodosa series with my children, and I do believe it's now going to be, it either is or is going to be a TV series. I'll put down here where you can find it. My daughter and I were flipping through channels, but we have so many streaming services that I cannot for the life of me remember. But we have read books 1 and 2. The first one is called Theodosa and the Serpents of Chaos, and her parents are the curators at a museum in London. And so they get all kinds of artifacts from all over the world, but the ones that she is most interested in are the ones from Egypt. And in this particular book, she thinks that the objects are cursed. And so she's trying to take the curse off of one of the objects, and things go awry, and it actually ends up in her cat, and that becomes a whole thing. But there, it's in London, and there's, a secret society and things about mummies and Egyptology. It's a very fun story, and they just continue to get fun along the way. So if that is something that you or a young person in your life is interested in, I definitely recommend this series. And like I said, it is going to be a TV series, and it says a sure bet for Harry Potter fans. So it has adventure, it has history. It's a lot of fun. Last year, one of my favorite children's books, middle grade books that I read, was called The Doldrums by Nicholas Gannon. And again, it kind of has that adventure. His parents, his grandparents. So let me read the back. It says, a dreamy charmer of a book. Archer B. Helmsley longs for adventure, grand adventure, with parachutes and exotic sunsets and interesting characters. The kinds of adventures his grandparents, who are famous explorers, have. At least the kinds they had before they went missing on an iceberg. Instead, what Archer has is an overprotective mother. How can he have an adventure when he can barely leave the house? Luckily, Archer also has friends like Adelaide L. Belmont and Oliver Glove. Together, Archer, Adelaide, and Oliver make a plan to rescue his grandparents. It's a good plan. Well, it's not bad anyway, but nothing goes quite as they expect. It is very good. And Archer and Oliver, to me, very much have kind of that Harry Potter, Ron Weasley relationship. Archer, very stuck up. He has overprotective parents. He's kind of always left in his room. And Oliver's family is loud and over the top, and his dad works for the paper, and their house is a mess. And he very much reminds me of Ron. And again, this book was really fun, but it has really beautiful illustrations in it as well, which I loved seeing throughout the book. And Adelaide is a super fun character as well. She's French, and so at first they don't really get along with her. And she has a wooden leg. And she makes up stories about why she has a wooden leg, and it is quite fun. So, more beautiful illustrations. And today, my kids and I went down to visit our new central library because they just finally got done with the remodel, and I found book number 2, and I am so excited to read this one. And it has colored illustrations, which are absolutely beautiful. Like, they're even more stunning than the black and white ones, and I loved the black and white ones. I just think they're beautiful. So this one says, Arthur Helmsley's grandparents, the famed explorers who went missing on an iceberg 2 years ago, are finally coming home. Archer is overjoyed. He has been waiting his whole life to meet his grandparents. Not everyone is rejoicing about the Helmsleys' return, though. Rumors are flying all around the unusual town of Rosewood. Maybe his grandparents weren't ever even on an iceberg. Maybe they made it all up. And maybe the especially harsh winter is all their fault. Everyone is blaming the Helmsley curse. But Archer knows the rumors are all false. There is no curse. His grandparents are being framed. With his best friends, Oliver and Adelaide, and their new neighbor, Kana, Archer sets out on his biggest adventure yet, rescuing his grandparents' reputation. It will mean unearthing the secrets that a powerful man wants to keep hidden, infiltrating the society of explorers in the heart of Rosewood, and braving the blizzard of the century. But don't worry, Archer has a plan. Sort of. So I'm very excited to read book number 2. It is such a fun story. It's not overly fast-paced, but there is lots of world building, and it's just really cute to see the friendship and bond between Archer and Oliver and Adelaide. So my favorite middle grade children's book of this year is Sweep, The Story of a Girl and Her Monster by Jonathan Oxer. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He also wrote The Night Gardener and Peter Nimble and His Fantastic Eyes. And I first heard about this story. One of the moms who goes to the same HomeLink program that we do had been talking about it. And she was talking about chimney sweeps and Victorian era London and how kids were, and it just sounded very interesting. And so I really wanted to read it. I fell in love with this story. It blew me away. I think I may have done a reading wrap up for this on my channel. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I'm not great with those guys. But I was crying. I was laughing. It was such a touching story. And at the very back of the book, the author has information. So he has a historical note about chimney sweeps of the time and information, and also about Victorian London that was very interesting, because, you know, we think of chimney sweeps and we think of Mary Poppins, and that wasn't really what it was. But let me read it. It says, "We save ourselves by saving others. It's been 5 years since the sweep disappeared. Orphaned and alone, Nan Sparrow had no other choice but to work for the ruthless chimney sweep named Wilkie Crudd. She spends her days sweeping out chimneys. The job is dangerous and thankless, but with her wits and will, Nan has managed to beat the deadly odds time and time again. When Nan gets stuck in a chimney fire, she fears the end has come. Instead, she wakes to find herself unharmed in an abandoned attic, and she is not alone. Huddled in the corner is a mysterious creature, a golem, made from soot and ash. Sweep is the story of a girl and her monster. Together, these two outcasts carve out a new life, saving each other in the process. Lyrically told by one of today's most powerful stories, Sweep is a heart-rending adventure about the everlasting gifts of friendship and wonder." I loved this book so much. I can't even fully put into words how much I loved it. And the bond that she has with her golem and how he comes to be and what he's created of and what he is created for is just utterly beautiful and funny. And it was just such a good story. So I definitely 100% recommend Sweep for young kids, for middle grade readers, for adults. And I have recently just purchased The Night Gardener from Jonathan, and we'll be reading that very soon. So I'm hoping it's as good as this one. This has been my favorite middle grade book so far this year, and it is actually in my top 3 favorite books total this year. So definitely recommend. Okay, and now for 2 series that I have not read that I am very much looking forward to that are in the middle grade genre. And the first is called The Time Travelers, Book 1 in the Gideon trilogy for kids who love Harry Potter, Linda Buckley Archer. The first book of the Gideon trilogy is set in 1763. Gideon Seymour, thief and gentleman, hides from the villainous Tarman. Suddenly the sky peels away like fabric, and from the gaping hole fall 2 curious-looking children. Peter Snock and Kate Dreyer have fallen straight from the 21st century thanks to an experiment with an anti-gravity machine. Before Gideon and the children have a chance to gather their wits, the Tarman takes off with the machine, and Peter and Kate's only chance of getting home. Soon, Gideon, Peter, and Kate are swept into a journey through an 18th century London and form a bond that they hope will stand strong in the face of unfathomable treachery. So, sounds very, very good. I love time traveling type stories, and I am very much into that whole, 18th century London. I think that's part of why I like Sweep so much. So, I'm very much looking forward to that. And then last but not least is the Wildwood series by Colin Malloy and Carson Ellis. I really knew absolutely nothing about this series, but I purchased the book because I was 100% drawn to the cover and wanted to devour it. And then I was lucky enough to find the other 2 books in the series at a used bookstore. And so for less than, I think, $5 a piece. And so I just bought the whole thing. So it is a series that I have on my list to read, hopefully this year. I have a bookmark in this one because I am hoping to get it read this summer. But let's go ahead and read the back. Prue McKell's life is ordinary, that is, until her brother is abducted by a murder of crows and taken to the impassable wilderness, a dense, tangled forest on the edge of Portland. I was born in Portland, so I'm already intrigued. No one's ever gone in, or at least returned to tell of it. So begins an adventure that will take Prue and her friend Curtis, that's my brother's name, deep into the impassable wilderness. There, they uncover a secret world in the midst of violent upheaval, a world full of warring creatures, peaceable mystics, and powerful figures with the darkest intentions. And what begins as a rescue mission becomes something much greater as the two friends find themselves intertwined in a struggle for the very freedom of this wilderness, a wilderness the locals call Wildwood. A richly satisfying weave of reality and fantasy. Malloy's debut is the kind of delicate, elaborate fantasy that is so well versed in classic Narnian tropes that it is destined to be enthusiastically embraced. I love a good Narnia story. Malloy has an immediately recognizable verbal style and creates a fully realized fantasy world. Ellis's illustrations perfectly capture the original world and contribute to the feel of an instant, timeless classic. So this one has beautiful illustrations as well, I guess. Like I said, I really don't know too much about this story. Hopefully I like them since I have purchased all three. But either way, I think they're just gorgeous. So how could I go wrong? So the first one is Wildwood. The second one is called Under Wildwood. And the last one is Wildwood Emporium. So I will definitely be doing a reading vlog for these, I think. So stay tuned for that at some point. Before I go, I wanted to tell you guys all what my three children said their favorite books were. My oldest daughter, Emma, who is 17, said that her favorite book growing up was Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. I'll put a picture of it here. She has read that book probably 10 times, and she says every time it makes her cry. My son, Noah, he loves a book series called Timmy Failure by Stefan Pastis, and it is hysterical. It's about this boy who is constantly messing things up, and his best friend is a polar bear. They together have a detective agency. And then my daughter Jillian's favorite book is Paddington by Michael Bond, and she has loved Paddington from the very first time I remember reading her chapter books, and she also really loves the Paddington movies. So those are their three favorite books and book series. So but that is all today. I know it has been a super long video. If you've made it this far, please give me a book emoji and let me know if you have read any of these, what your thoughts on them were, if you have, and if any of them sound interesting to you. Please also go and check out all of the other participating channels. They will be linked below. And thank you so much to Nina for inviting me to do this. I had a really great time. So I will talk to you all very soon.